Desiring God. And it is a real pleasure to talk with you about it, to speak with you about it this morning. I'm glad you all are here to hear these words. Last week we did a sermon called Putting Jesus First. And I challenged you all to put Jesus first in your week, and to call me or to text me or to email me something by Friday or Saturday of last week. This week, I felt compelled, led by the Lord actually, to go to Psalm 63. And we're going to go there in a bit, but I need to tell you of what happened in my week, because I want to bring you along on this journey. We're going to take a journey this morning on getting to know, how do you think of, how do you desire God in your life? But before we get to the text, we're going to talk a little bit. And I want to talk to you about what I just said about Psalm 63. I had it and I was like, well, Lord, this is just what we talked about. You know, putting Jesus first. Well, it's different. It's desiring God. It's the same, but it's not the same. And on Thursday afternoon, I had a friend come to my house. And he's 35 years old. He used to work for me from ages 16 to 22. That's not important for you or me today. But what is important is he lost his bride 7 weeks ago. A 32-year-old girl. She had cancer for 4.5 years. 3.5 years. She's an Irish Catholic. As Irish and as Catholic as you can get. And they took a trip to Ireland because her cancer was in remission. And they had a trip of a lifetime, and they returned back. When they got back to the Omaha airport, they had to go into the test again, and guess what? Cancer was back. And my young friend, I've known him, like I said, since he was 16, and because he was my employee and he turned into my friend, I would talk to him. I would talk to him about his Roman Catholic faith. And I would say, what we say to all Roman Catholics. But we had an open exchange, and this young man, I don't know if he's saved yet or not, he knows Jesus. But there's a difference between knowing Jesus and living for Jesus. So him and his wife are back in Omaha. They've just got this news that it's in her bones. They're driving home. And what I was talking to him about, the only reason I'm sharing this with you today is this. We talked a lot about, when do you think of God? When do you desire God? It was something like this. And he had told me earlier, not Thursday, but he had told me earlier, as he was going home, he saw the Truckers' Chapel in York, sitting there at Petro. And on the outside of it, there were banners, because I continually asked him, I said, you're not mad at God, are you? Or if you're, at least tell me. And he saw a sign, a banner that I don't even recall what it said, but he said, I knew God was present in our lives. But getting back to next Thursday now, he's been 6 weeks. And I asked him again, I said, are you mad at God? And he said, no. And then he started to weep. He's still very, very much hurting the loss of his wife. And we talked about, I told him the first time I had met her and him and all this. And he had lived with her for 2 years before they got married. Of course, Bill got in his face at that time about that. But Thursday was talking about thinking about God. And I kept saying to him, do you pray? Yes, I do. Do you read the Word? No. And I had a Bible there just bought for him. And I said, you know, you don't have to take this. And he opened it up and he looked at it and he goes, you know. But what he did take is Bible quotes. In other words, if you're feeling down, go here. If you're feeling mad, go here. But the point of our journey today, me and you, is this. When he got emotional, I said to him, do you know the story of Abraham? He said, no, I don't. So I told him about Abraham and Isaac and how God had told Abraham to take his son, the seed, the one he'd waited 99 years for, take him to the mountain and to sacrifice him. And it took 3 days, and something about that story that always grabs me was, it says, early the next morning, Abraham left for the mountain. I think I probably would have been a little wishy-washy. But I told my friend this, and I said, right when it was God's test of Abraham's faith, Abraham had bound up his son. Remember, Isaac asked him when they're going up the mountain, Daddy, where's the sacrifice? And he says, God will provide the sacrifice. He binds him. He takes out his knife. He is ready to kill him until an angel stops him right here. And I said to him, I will never know what it's like to lose. I have no idea what you're going through. But do you realize Abraham didn't have to kill his son? But God did. God sacrificed his son. And my friend stopped and he said, you know what, I've never thought of it that way. And he says, thank you, Bill. That might make sense someday. You see, it's not about me and it's not about you today, but I really want to get into each one of your heads and my head. And so when you walk out of here going, now, when do I desire God? When do I think about God? Because with this person, it was interesting when we prayed. He's a big, strong, he was a college football player. And I could feel him trembling when I was praying for him. And the next day, he sent me this. He said, when we think of God and positive thoughts, nothing can bring us down. Nothing can get in the way. Let's tweak that a little bit. And let's say, when we desire God, when we follow God, nothing can stop us. Now, it may not be what we think, but God's will be done. And I texted him back and I said, thank you. You just gave me the title for the sermon. We're going to leave Thursday now, but I told you that story to talk about desiring God, to talk about thinking about God. Because you see, each one of us does it different. And we're going to do, what I want us to do right now is, remember those boats when you go to the amusement parks, the ones on rails, and you go around and you see all this stuff. They can't run on their own, but you load up with them, a group of, let's say, 20 people, that's about what we have this morning, and you go down this course and you see all these cute little things. This morning I want us all to get on a boat, and that boat that we're talking about this morning is, when do you think of God? When do you desire God? Now kids, you may think of God when you read a Bible story. Maybe you were thinking of God, hopefully you were thinking of God in your Sunday school class. Or when you get in trouble, you might say a quick prayer to God. But that would be how you enter the boat. That's how you get there. That's what I want us to do. I want each one of us to think of it this morning. Those of us that are older, that are getting older in health, maybe it's our declining health. Lord, I can feel my body. It's starting, it isn't what it used to be. Maybe that's your time. Get on the boat. Maybe it's feeling shame or regret of things in your life. God never wants to shame us. But maybe that's when you think of God. Get on the boat. Hopefully it's during your devotion time. If it's early in the morning or last thing at night, it's when you spend that time with God. Desiring Him, thinking of Him. Get on the boat. We all need to get on this boat now. When do you think of or desire God? There was a punter killed last week. The boy died in Wisconsin, a Nebraska punter, and the Wisconsin punter, and the LSU punter in the back lived. They were 3 miles away from where they were going, on a strange road, in the dark of night in a rainstorm. No shoulder, boom, 2 dead. Maybe that's when you thought of God 2 weeks ago. The wonderful thing about our punter is his Facebook page started with a Bible verse. He was a young man of God. They buried him yesterday, north of Grand Island. You see, we don't know when our time is coming. But our desiring God, our thinking of God, should have that in the back of our minds. We don't know. What I'd like to do now is go to Psalm 63. And I've had it up here this morning so that Sam doesn't have to bother with me. What I'd like you to do is have everybody stand, please. Everybody stand. All but one, all but two. And Vicki, scooch, you and Nana, scooch over just a little bit this way, just for now. Yep, you, Vicki. I want to read this together, okay? Let's begin. O God, you are my God. I shall seek you earnestly. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh yearns for you. In a dry and weary land, there is no water. Thus I have seen you in the sanctuary, to see your power and your glory. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you. You may be seated. That is Psalm 63. That's all the farther we're going today is those 3 verses. Now we're all on this boat as far as... That hurt just watching you. We're all on this boat, and Rich is in the front seat in the cushioned seat because of his back. But we're starting to go down this trail on thinking about and desiring God. Let's do a little setup here. This is important. Okay? This is verse 1. Now what I did is I did change translations on you. Okay? And I'll explain that in a moment. But let's get started. First of all, where are we? We're in the Psalms. What's so interesting about that? Realize this is a psalm. Every psalm was sung. Every psalm was written to be sung. Okay? Who wrote it? David. What time of his life? In verse 11 he calls himself a king. So we know this is after Saul is dead, when he has had the kingdom. A little bit further for our info, so we know this. David is out there on a run for his life. For what has happened is Absalom, okay, his son, has taken over the throne. Back up just a little bit, real quick on this story. Absalom wanted to be king. There's only one problem. Daddy's king. So Absalom does this. He sits out at the gates of Jerusalem because people from all over the land would come to have the king decide something. If Junior and I were fighting over something and we couldn't make it come to a decision, we would go to the king and the king would say, Junior's right, Bill's wrong. End of story, end of discussion. So what Absalom did is he sits at the gate and all these people with their problems would come. And good old Absalom became the friend of the people. And he would make the big decisions for them. And he was building his own cause. He built his own cause so big that the whole country rebelled against David. David is out here, not in the wilderness, but in the desert of Judah. Wilderness is where he ran from Saul. He is out there because his army commander, Joab, came to him and said, brother, we got to get out of here. They're marching towards Jerusalem right now. They're going to kill you and take over the capital. Now we know that God had his hand in this. And we know it is for the sins of David that this has all played out. And something horrible took place on the roof of Absalom. That God had promised would take place. But for us this morning in Psalm 63, we've got a king in a dry and weary land out there with some of his soldiers, his men, and the court, the people in the court, his advisors, all those people. He has snuck out. This is the story, remember? They're walking out and there's this loudmouth guy and he keeps heckling David. He keeps throwing stones at him and Joab says to him, I'll take care of him. And David says, no, for it is the Lord's will that he does that. So here we are. Now we're about to get begin. Our amusement ride boat, we've turned the first corner, and what does it talk about? Seeking God, desiring God, thinking about God is this. Look where David starts. Oh God, you are what? My God. Thank you. When you and I desire God, it's got to be right here. My God. I thought of when I first started working on this, I thought of when I was a young boy. When you were kids. Remember the pride you had? There was a bunch of men, hey, where's your dad? That's my dad. The pride you had. Or when you got off a school bus, is that your dog? Yeah, that's my dog. That's my dad's car. That's my house. You had pride in it because it was yours. You had a relationship with it. People, we cannot desire God without doing what the king did. Oh God, you are my God. So our boat going down the amusement ride, the first thing we see is giant, my God. We have got to get there, each one of us, in our relationship with God. He's got to be your God. Maybe you were lucky enough to have a pony. Okay? My pony. This is way different because this deals with Almighty God. And that's what David tells us right off the bat. You are my God. Then look what it says. I earnestly search for you, and I will quote the old king. It actually says, I seek you early, like the first part of the day, or the first part of your life. I don't know the Hebrew word here, but I do know that, look what David says, I earnestly search for you, okay? And stop and look at the situation. What is David concentrating on? Look at those red words. You are my God, I search for you, my soul thirsts for you, my whole body longs for what? For you. You've got a king out in the desert, chased out by a no-good son, and is he complaining? Is he whining about not being treated fairly? Where is his concern? Item number 2, the boat is now running this way. On the other side, it says, concentrate on God. Concentrate on God. That's what David's doing. You are my God. I earnestly search for you. It's not half-hearted. People, during our workday, somebody says something, or we start to kind of drift away, whatever it is. Earnestly seek God every day. My soul thirsts for you. Here's why I changed translations. Because the ESV here says, my flesh faints for you. Okay? I like this one better. This is the NLT. That's my soul thirsts for you. My whole body longs for you. It shows the dedication that you and I need. But then it says, in this parched and weary land where there is no water. You see how beautiful that is? My soul thirsts for you. And he's out in the desert. Now, does he say he is thirsty? Does he say, it's not my fault I'm out in the desert? Does he say, does he concern himself with his own? I'll guarantee if old Billy Boy was out there, I'd be praying, I shouldn't be, but I would be thinking, Lord, you got to get that scoundrel out of there. You got to get me back. But he doesn't. You see what the king does? When we desire God, we concentrate on God. My whole body longs for you in this parched and weary land where there is no water. My soul thirsts for you, because he definitely would be thinking about liquids in this land. When we search, desire God, nothing matters but the red letters, basically. Is that the way it is for me and you? You notice where David's priorities are? What happens When you're stuck under a tree in a rainstorm, be careful what you say in Sunday school, and you get poured on. Well, you're great entertainment for those in the dry. But so many times we get caught up in ourselves, which is rightly so, but wrongly so, is when our connection to God is not desiring Him, but fix this for me, God. You know I love you. You know I believe in you. So get with it and fix it. I know that sounds horrible. I'm almost afraid of lightning striking me down. But that's our attitude sometimes. And here's why. Look at verse number 2. I've seen you in your sanctuary. I've gazed upon you in power and glory. You see, there was no tabernacle yet. There was the ark in the tent. David's desire for God is because he not only knows the love, and that's coming in a moment, but he has gazed upon who God is. We cannot desire God without knowing Him. How can you want something you know nothing about? David is referring to, I've seen you in the sanctuary. I know your power. And I've gazed on your power and your glory. He desires God because he knows who God is. If you're sitting here thinking, you know, Pastor, this is well good, but don't be telling me how to live my life. Who are you serving here? David says this to me and you. I have seen you in your sanctuary and I've gazed upon your power and glory. He has worshipped God and he longs for that out in the desert. Now, where we contradict, where our culture is different is, David has worshipped God and is using Him in a troubling time. He hasn't mentioned his own problems yet at all, has he? He misses worshiping God. But in our culture today, usually what comes first? The problems, and then we go to God. Worship should be very important to us. One of the most disheartening things, I'll be honest with you, is people's lack of attendance in church. It wears on me because I feel like I'm dropping the ball on Jesus. David has that same thing with the power that he's searching for. You see, he worships Jesus. He longs for it. We should want to be here. A lady said to my wife last week, oh man, I'm going to miss you this week in church. Because there's a camaraderie. There should be a unification in our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Worshiping to handle the trouble. Just the opposite of trouble to handle the worship. Now, the boat is in verse 2. We're now turning right. Okay? We're going this way. And the next thing is, he tricked you. And that's me. Small h. The title of your sermon, you should see that, and something ain't right there. Isn't right there. Is thinking about God the same as desiring God? Absolutely, not even in the same boat. You see, desiring God is what David does. I can think about a 66 Charger with orange paint and 14-inch back tires. Or a 64 green pickup. But I don't I do desire the pickup, but not like God. Thinking about has nothing to do with desiring. I put that on there because my friend on Thursday said, yes, when I think about God and have positive thoughts, it's a good thing. And I did get on him. I talked to him about that because you see, thinking about doesn't mean diddly squat. Desiring is a whole different thing. That's what David is doing now. He is truly desiring God. People, last week, serve Jesus, trust Jesus above everything else. This week, were you desiring or thinking about God? The King is leading us here into what to do and how to do it. Last verse. Herein lies the answer. We talked about it in Sunday school. We talked about it on Wednesday night. In the next month, we're going to be talking about it. In the next year, we're going to be talking about it, God willingly. Here it is. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you. All right, most of the translations use the word your steadfast love. Old King says your loving kindness. Okay? The problem I have with steadfast is we don't use it a lot in our dialect anymore. God's love that never fails. What makes it so powerful? Because God is the one backing it up. The God that has never not kept a promise. That's the love. And that's what the King is saying right here. Your steadfast love, your loving kindness, your unfailing love is better than life itself. Okay? I want everybody to read this verse with me right now. Okay? Your unfailing love is better than life itself. How I praise you. All right, now, here's what I want you to do. We're going to read just the first line itself, and I want you to think about this. When you walked in here, okay, did you stand behind that? Because you see, to desire God, you have to believe in the first line. If you don't, who are you going to live for? I mean, I know I'm getting in your face here, but people, the boat is turning. We can see the exit. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. I want you to say it with me now, thinking you tomorrow saying this line. You ready? This is you tomorrow. Here we go, everybody. Your unfailing love is better than life itself. You see where David was? Are you there? Am I there? That's what's important. David, the king, knows that life, and imagine what the life of David was in the palace. He gave so much gold later on to the temple they couldn't even weigh it. And silver, and he wanted to build it. God said, no, you got too much blood on your hands. But you see, people, your desire, my desire, will grow tenfold when we know this, when we live this, when we think this, that nothing is better than God's love, His steadfast love, meaning it ain't moving. It isn't moving, excuse me. When I talk to you about that, about desiring God, the first thing that should come to our attention is this: His unfailing love. That's what it's all about. That's where we go. Last point for me and you. We talked about where David was. Bless you. There's our 3 verses. This is important for me and you when something happens tomorrow that isn't in your plans. You see David's circumstances there? In a dry and weary land where there is no water. Does that have anything to do with his request to God? Nothing. It hinges on what? You are my God. I seek you earnestly. Number 3, your unfailing love. Nothing about, Lord, get me out of here. Nothing about, kill that scallywag of a son of mine. Nothing about, this isn't fair. Only one thing. I desire you. I seek you. I earnestly search for you. That's what you and I need to have. We need to have a barrier that no matter what anybody says, no matter what anybody does, it doesn't reflect our desire for God. And that again is part of the thing that hurts me when people don't come to church. Where is their desire? What did I do wrong? How can I preach Jesus Christ and God's unfailing love so that they want to come to church? So that there is a desire. Tuesday, Friday, Thursday, whatever that is, when the wheels fall off, remember David, chased out of his capital by his own son, and he only wants one thing. He only wants God. When I was researching your sermon, I came across the thing on the back of your bulletin. And as our boat gets to the exit, we're ready to get off. Look what it says on the back of your bulletin. God, you see, when we realize God's love, all these take place. God's love is never blind. He's never blind to your tears. He sees your tears. He's never deaf to your prayers. He's never silent to your pain. You see, sometimes we don't think that. We don't live like that. We don't know that. You got a problem? God knows about it. You're untreated justly? God knows about it. You have sinned? God knows about it. You want to do right in God's eyes when you repent of your sin. God knows about all of these things. And look at the last sentence. It says, He sees you, He hears you, He will deliver you. Now, we know the end of the story with David, how he regains the kingdom. David doesn't know it, but he's writing this. He knows one thing. He desires God. When you're feeling unloved, when you're feeling unimportant, when you're feeling insecure, know God never forgets you. Know who loves you, people. We have a short sermon today. The boat is time for us to get off.